welcome to another edition of Fighters Planet podcast. We are back. Took a little break, took a little hiatus. It's about a year now since our last podcast. I'm your host, Walter Salcido. I just interrupted my man here, Alex Solano.
No, sorry.
I know. How you been, man? Good to see you. It's been a while.
It's been a while. How you been?
It's good. You know, we were both tested, by the way, so we're both negative, so we're good. You know, we have a very special guest today coming back. We had to bring it up a little bit special. Been on the podcast before. He is in the blood business. My man, Mike Rodriguez. What's happening, Mike? How you doing?
Alex, Walter, what's happening, guys? Good to be on with you guys. Welcome back. You know, there's been a lot of hiatuses going on, but it's good to see you guys back and ready to chop it up.
Yeah. And what I mean by the blood business, I mean blood business. Not only, of course, one of the best Cutman in the game, been in the game for years, but also homicide detective. So it's kind of cool how his both roles kind of fit in, right?
Yeah, you know, that's kind of I always hope that what I do with one makes me good at the other, and it just kind of worked out like that. And you know, I'm very blessed to do, you know, two things that I love to do at a high level, and you know, what's better than that?
You know, for most, you know, who didn't see the last podcast or heard you before, you have a very interesting story on how you got in the game. And although we do want to have a few topics, though, I want to bring that story up again if you can. Let us know, how did you get in and who actually brought you in and how did you get started? Because I was talking to a lot of people, and now that they've had some time off, they're looking at other things and they're asking, hey, how can I be a judge? How can I be a Cutman? How can I be this? You know, so they had time to think about a few things. So you yourself, you being one of the best in the world, how did you get started in this?
You know, it's crazy because I never ever paid attention to what a Cutman did. You know, I was a former fighter. I didn't turn pro, but you know, I fought amateurs, and you know, and a few years back, I started training some guys, and because of my regular job as a homicide detective, I started learning. Well, you know, I'm busy with work. I can't always be in the gym. You know, guys, you know, all the time with trainers like, you know, Freddie Roach, Robert Garcia, you know, Joel Diaz, you know, guys like that. They're in the gym, and that's what they do for a living. And I was kind of fooling myself because you can't. It's something you got to dedicate 100% of the time, you know, if you're getting a fighter ready for a fight. So I was thinking to myself, like, what could I do to kind of stay, you know, in this thing? And I started kind of researching how to be a Cutman. And the first conversation I ever had with a Cutman was with a very, very great Cutman, David Martinez out of La Habra. You know, he'd worked with Oscar De La Hoya, Miguel Cotto, Shane Mosley. And I kind of picked his brain a little bit, and I just started working stuff at like the lower levels. I mean, because in boxing, you know, you got the same guys like Stitch Duran and, you know, Carlos Vargas and Miguel Diaz and, you know, guys, you know, Ruben Gomez, guys that have been working cuts, you know, 30, 40 years. And, it's, you know, you always kind of know that feeling like, it's kind of a closed business. It's just not going to open for everybody. You started working some very lower level fights, some MMA stuff. MMA opened up some things. You know, and I just kind of took what my personality and the strong things that I think I bring to the table with preparation. And when I get onto something, I want to know as much about it as I possibly can. And I really did, you know, pay my dues. And it just kind of, as I moved up the food chain, those people that I mentioned and a bunch of other people, even with people like Freddie Roach and other trainers, they started putting some faith in me and just kind of move up the food chain. And it may seem like an overnight success, but it's really not. It's really about paying your dues and taking pride in your craft, because being a Cutman, that's really what it is. And you're called upon, you know, sometimes in a very chaotic, rapidly evolving situations, that the work that you do is actively going to have an impact on those fights. And I've been blessed to work with some fantastic fighters, some fantastic trainers and teams and management groups. And, you know, the last 10, 12 years has been such a blessing. And I'm very fortunate now. I don't have to go looking for work. You know, it kind of comes to me, and I'm very grateful for that.
Was it a good thing when you stopped boxing? You know, because as a homicide detective, were you all, you know, bruised up? I can only imagine sparring will get you a little bruised up. So homicide detective, bruised up like guys.
Well, you know, I had stopped fighting actually, you know, probably in my very early 20s. I was actually scheduled to turn professional.
Gotcha.
There was some talk of me turning professional on the Rocky Lockridge Tony Lopez undercard, and when I just saw
Tony Lopez,
that fight on July 23rd, 1988. at the old Arco. I know I had talked to John Chargan about that, but I got a call from the sheriff's department, and I went to Don and I said, "Hey, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this because, I want to go to the sheriff's academy." And he says, "You know what, Mike, having a career is there's never a bad thing." And I think I made a choice because next month I start my 33rd year with the sheriff's department. But
congratulations,
boxing,
man.
that old girlfriend that you dated in elementary school still look good, when you're in high school, and as an adult, it's just kind of calls you back. And if somebody would ask me when I was a kid, when I used to sit in the garage and hit the heavy bag and pretend that I was Alexis Arguello or Roberto Duran or Matthew Saad Muhammad or Larry Holmes, that I wouldn't not make my mark as a fighter or as a trainer, but make my mark as a cut man. It's just weird how, and we know this in 2020, how the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, and just you never know where your ultimate destination is going to be, but you try to appreciate the journey. And I think that's the one thing that I take the most pride in, and the thing hold closest to my heart is the people that you meet along the way, and journey and working at a top level with now many world champions and many world championship trainers, and I'm very blessed.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. I can only imagine you seeing them as they're coming up the rankings, from amateurs to pros to world champions, and you be there kind of every step of the way as you see them as a cut man. So I can imagine the pride you take behind that.
Well, I got to experience that firsthand with Julian J. Rock Williams, the title, from Jared Hurd.
Yeah.
And he lost, in his first title defense with Jerson Rosario. But, I was with Julian since he was 2-0, when
wow.
my cut of my pay was like $30-$40, and working. That if you know anything about boxing, he's a very bright mind, in boxing, and it's somebody that both of them have become, very, very close friends, like family. But when you see that, and you see a kid now fighting on a main event, in front of the whole world to see, in front of millions of people, and your work is being watched by millions of people, sometimes you got to look around and be like, wow, I'm really here.
Yeah.
And you can't let it affect you because you got a job to do. And the one thing I know, and like anything else with your guys' jobs and what you do, and then do at a high level of sports, there's always people that think they can do your job better. You know what I mean? Because it's make one mistake and all of a sudden now you can do 100 good things and people won't believe anything that you've done. But if they can hear one bad thing about you, boy, they'll jump all over it.
Yeah.
And fight game is kind of no different than that. But you got to take the good with the bad, and if you're going to work at a high level and you're going to the work that you do is going to be seen by millions of people, then sometimes you got to open yourself up, and at least people have their own opinions about things. But that's why you surround yourself with good people, and you always try to do a great consistent body of work that people can appreciate. And when your peers and the fighters that you work with and the teams appreciate your work, that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've been in the game for so long. I mean, that consistency level is there. And I've not heard one bad thing about you at all. So, I mean, being that much in the game, that really says a lot about you and how much you know, as far as being a cut man. Sharing that knowledge, we also know that, your son is kind of getting in that cut game. Is that kind of another prideful thing to kind of see him coming up in the game?
If you look at anybody in any genre of whether it's acting, whether it's race car driving, athletics, coaching, a lot of it's a family business. You look at promoter Tom Brown with his family, the Goosen family, and you look at Robert Garcia, with his son now helping him train, and it is, but it's well deserved because it's not like Andrews' name just showed up. All of a sudden he's working fights because I said, okay, that didn't work fights. This is professional boxing. And when you entrust the care of a cut man to a certain fighter, that's a pretty big deal. But I started him off working some 4-round fights about 6-7 years ago. And, it's kind of taken off for him too. Between the two of us, we got about 45 fighters worldwide.
Wow.
And that he works, with about 10 to 12 of them, that basically now he's kind of taken over those guys. He's like, hey, Dad, those are my guys now. And it's kind of like a joke, like I can call him, and he's battle tested. Main thing, guys, is he's battle tested. He's worked fights, world championship fights, with like Sergey Lipinets. He's worked with Abel Ramos, who just fought last weekend against Yordenis Ugas, who I worked with Ugas, but I had been around Ramos's camp for many years because I worked with his brother Jesus, or his nephew Jesus as well. And I remember a fight when Lipinets had a title eliminator when Julian Williams fought Jermall Charlo here in LA. Lipinets was the fight right before, and Julian and the Breadman had always told me, "Hey, look, when we fight for the title, Mike, we don't want you to work with any other guys." Very reasonable because big moment for Julian. But lo and behold, who ends up fighting right before him is Lipinets, one of my main guys, and already been working with some of that management's younger fighters. And I had to honor what Julian told me, but I told Sergey's trainer, Buddy McGirt, Hall of Fame fighter, Hall of Fame. If you guys trust me, Andrew can definitely do the job. And Andrew works the fight, and I'm like expecting father, like in the waiting room, fight on the monitor and getting Julian ready. And what happens is that just kind of in a twist of fate, Sergey fights Freddie Roach's guy, Lenny Zaparigna from Australia, and both of them are cut.
Wow.
And does a terrific job, so much so that Buddy McGirt and Sergey ends up knocking him out. But he goes, "Mike, it was like having you in the corner." I remember I got a bunch of texts congratulating me on my good work. Text him back and said, "You guys could only see the side of the hands and the Cutman. That wasn't me. That was my son." Coming out party, 4 years ago, as far as working with main events, and now training wheels are off, and he's very good at it. He was a very good athlete. The one thing I'm very proud of him is he never lets the moment get too big for him. Our job is to bring calm to that corner, and sometimes very chaotic situations. A fighter's hurt, he's cut, he's swollen, he's breathing heavy, he's trying to get instructions. He's in a dogfight, and we're like a pit crew in there, man, and we got to be very efficient. And the last thing you want to see is any cut man, panicking and, with shaking hands. You got to bring that calm to let them know. It's something I always tell my fighters right before the fight. Just because you see me working on you doesn't mean anything is wrong. What do we have going on in California and the whole West right now? We got a lot of wildfires. We got a lot of fires. But if you address those fires, as in small cuts, swelling, and you address them early, you never let them become a big problem. And I always equate that to wildfire. And you just have to be very, very much preventive maintenance. And I always tell fighters that. So I say, hey, just because I'm working on you doesn't mean that that anything's wrong. I'm trying to make sure that nothing becomes a factor that will inhibit your ability to go out there and do your job for the next 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's great advice. Keep them nice and calm so they can perform better.
Absolutely.
Like you were mentioning consistency. Now with COVID and all these, does that throw a wrench in your consistency? Does COVID, and all the so many guards now that we have to go through protocols.
Well, absolutely. The athletic commissions, and rightfully so. You can't blame them. They have to put these protocols in place first of all, for the safety of everybody that's participating, whether it's the athletic commission, the officials, the judges, the fighters, the cornermen, the TV crew. I've been fortunate, and knocking on wood, I've worked all the PBC fights in the last month.
Oh, nice.
Here in LA, but I do have to Thursdays in quarantine and get tested. Pretty much you're in your room until the fights happen on Saturday or Sunday, depending on when they are. And, you're masked up and you're gloved up. And the way it's a little different now is usually I work for the fighter. The fighter will hire me. And I've had an opportunity to work with some camps that I probably wouldn't have normally worked with because they only have 2 cutmen, one for the red corner, one for the blue corner. So like I worked with, Erzlande Lara. I had worked with Ugas before, but now I got a chance to work with him again there. So it's just a little bit different, but it kind of there's a flip side of that because 2 of the guys that me and Andrew have worked with, Scott Nyambar, who lost his title opportunity with Gary Russell, but he's back on Showtime in a couple of weeks. He's fighting over in Connecticut with trainer John Pullman. We can't go because they got designated over there already, and the same with Lipinets. So even though I'm getting an opportunity to work with some very good camps, some very good fighters that I've never worked with, some of them I have, but I'm also going to have some of my other guys that I normally work with that they're not fighting here. I'm probably not going to be able to go there. So I did do that one time, though, when they first started the bubble over in Vegas at the MGM with Jesse Magdaleno. Even though they have 2 great cutmen, Stitch Duran and Mike Basil, Jesse still brought me in as far as only having the 2 people in the corner with me and Jorge Capetillo. I still worked with Jesse, but that's really not the norm right now. And
Hmm.
everybody, it's one of those things, man. It's we live in a different world right now, and we just have to. I'm not going to say embrace it, guys. We have to accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're only doing it for one reason. We're doing it so that we can flatten the curve on this virus, and that
Right.
fewer people, no people are affected. By the grace of God, I've been tested 10 times,
Yeah.
in the last couple of months, and I haven't come back with a positive test. But there's people that I've seen at the fights that arrive with me, and they're gone, and a couple hours later because they tested positive, and
Oh,
you know,
wow.
the whole camp has to leave, and all that preparation kind of goes down the drain. But they can't
Hmm.
risk, exposing, everybody else, and whatever job people are doing, whether it's going out to eat or getting a haircut,
Hmm.
the world has changed, and this, and not just in the world, but in this country, we've been going through a lot. I'm not even going to say growing pains. We've just been going through some pains
Yeah.
Hmm.
for a lot of people, and it's hit a lot of people very close to home.
Right.
Nothing really affects people. We can see things on TV, and it's just kind of like what I do as a homicide detective. It always happens, you think, to somebody else, and until
Right.
something very close to home, it doesn't hit close to home.
Hmm.
And I think things that have been going on in our country the last few months,
Hmm.
and with the virus, not only in our country but worldwide, they've done what, guys? They've hit close to home in
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
shape or form. We know somebody that's been affected in a negative way with all the
Hmm.
things going on in the world.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough situation, man. And unfortunately, we still got a few months at least to go. We still got some time that we
If
still have
not
to be
longer, yeah.
careful. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
do you see things coming back to normal, or do you think that this is a switch and now the whole game's going to change?
Well, I look at it like this. When I'm done here, I'm probably going to watch the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans game. From what I understand, they're about 1/7 capacity with people.
Yeah,
Okay. The fights are at least going on. Fighters are fighting. Now you're not seeing the Manny Pacquiaos and the Canelo Alvarez's fighting,
right.
because those guys are going to fight more in live gates, or maybe they're going to fight in a different country, or they may
Hmm.
end up doing that. But there's a lot of logistics to work out with that. I've
Hmm.
been a big NBA fan. You got the Lakers and the Clippers that may be meeting.
Yeah,
Most people in LA are diehard Laker fans. I do like the Lakers because I was a Kobe guy, but I've been
yeah.
a year diehard Clipper fan. So these are new, interesting times as a Clipper fan. So things are, when I say getting back to normal, I don't know if they're going to get back to normal, guys, but at least they're going to get back in some kind of
Slowly.
Oh,
way that we can accept and maybe build on, and hopefully, as far as the virus goes, hopefully things kind of get back to normal. But the main thing is making sure that people are healthy and people are doing things to keep themselves healthy,
yeah.
and it really bothers me when we're so divided on things that we should, as a community and as a culture and as a people and as a nation, that we should come together on rather than
Hmm.
pull farther apart.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's just so weirdly divided right now, and unfortunately, uh, politics has made its way into sports. And before, sports used to be our safe haven. That's where we went to get away from all this.
Escape.
But especially with the virus thing, how that's becoming political too, which is kind of crazy if you wear a
Yeah,
mask and things like that.
and then you factor in, guys, in an election year, and I'm one of those people. I try to evaluate each situation and each issue on its
Hmm.
own, based on facts, and I don't want to get into a political thing, but
Hmm.
there that you can see on either side, and it's just, people just have to have an empathy and an understanding
Right.
for other people, because it's all a matter of perspectives.
Yep.
And like I said earlier, if it doesn't hit home to you,
Hmm.
you just watch media, which will fill you with maybe they think you're supposed to feel, instead of
Hmm.
evaluating things on how you feel as a person. And
I
that's the
know.
sports, man, because working in the boxing world, I come across every walk of life, man,
Hmm.
every race, nationality,
Yeah.
whether it be guys from Mexico, African American fighters from here, Mexican Americans from here, Russians, guys
Hmm.
from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Canada. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, I worked with fighters from, from Cuba, from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Canada.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, the fight game's crazy.
and a guy from Detroit, and another guy from New York, and a guy
Yeah.
from Arizona. So, what does that tell you? That it is diverse, and
Right.
boxing, big world, but it's a very small community, and as much acrimony as sometimes we have, and there's a lot of going back and forth and jockeying for position amongst fighters. But for the most part, whether it be in the broadcasting, the media, the fighters, the management, the promoters, we can all fight with each other, but we're all going to stick up for each other in the end.
Yeah, that's right. Whenever they bring up the whole UFC versus boxing debate, oh, you can tell boxing community, they come together.
They stand up.
They come together.
10 minutes later, like me and my brother, we would fight all the time. We couldn't find anybody else to fight. We'd fight each other. But if somebody messing with either one of them, they're going to have to fight both of us. My dad ingrained that us, and very early on that the blood's definitely thicker than the mud.
Yeah, definitely. Now with boxing, we are getting some fights back, which is awesome.
Yes.
But we're still getting these weird disputes. You got the whole Canelo thing with the zone, which is I found really, really odd. If Dan Rafael's report was correct, I mean, the zone choosing MMA fighters over premium boxers. That's kind of weird, you know what I mean? And I don't know if they're just trying to get away from that. What is it? $368 million contract.
Buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
Having a little buyer's remorse when they really figured out the numbers. And Canelo's a generational fighter. When you go back to Canelo, the ones before him were pretty much Mayweather, Pacquiao, and then you had guys like De La Hoya. But it's a different economy, man. It's a different time.
They even offered De La Hoya. Fight or something. Wasn't that the rumor?
When you his own perspective, and I'm not justifying.
He's one of the premium fighters.
I'm not. Is that they're probably thinking those people bring the most people to the table to watch fights.
Yeah.
They're not looking at it from a boxing perspective.
Right.
And we're in the boxing business. What I think Canelo would kill all those guys, Masvidal and Khabib in a boxing match. Absolutely. He's a middleweight champion of the world for a reason.
Right.
That's why, and I have tremendous respect, for MMA fighters, and you wouldn't want to meet any of those guys in a no holds barred, fight guys like that I know very well, like Kung Lee. I love Kung.
Yeah. Very technical.
And maybe at one point I could outpoint Kung in a boxing, right? But I've held mitts and pads for Kung with kicks.
Yeah.
I want part of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah. He broke Ken Shamrock's forearm with a kick.
Imagine learning how to hold pads for kicks. I learned how to do that with Kung.
Yeah.
And he would come like far from my nose. And he's like, "Hey, Mike, trust me." And he's a great friend. But what I'm getting at is that you respect every craft and every discipline, because I definitely do. But it's just a matter on what rules that you're gonna set forth. They allow takedowns. Then the boxers probably, the boxers it's gonna be a rough or if they allow kicks. So it's just a matter of respecting the others. I want to see Canelo fight the best fighters out there. I want to see him fight, one of the Charlo brothers. I want to see him fight, Dimitri Bivol. I want to see him fight, guys that Canelo seems like he can kind of move weight classes. He can kind of do like the De La Hoya did, the Mayweather did, the Pacquiao did, where they're not just fighting other fighters. They're bringing big time events. It's part of pop culture, whether you like them or not. Not everybody rooted for Oscar. Not everybody and that. Not everybody rooted for Hector Macho Camacho or Prince Nassim Ahmed. But when those guys fought, or Eric Morales and Marco Antonio, and Canelo seems to have that same effect, just like Pacquiao did. And I'm going to give you guys an example. I've worked with over 20 world champions, some very popular fighters, and I had the opportunity, thanks to president of Manny Pacquiao Promotions, Sean Gibbons, and Freddie Roach, and Freddie's assistant wild card, Marie Spivey, and I had a chance to work with Manny. And I remember, and I still have the video because somebody sent me the video of me standing on the apron outside the ring during the national. and you can see my back, and you see Freddie's back, and you can see Manny and Justin Fortune's there, and Boo Boy,
Oh,
and
wow.
we're at the GM Grand, and the national anthem's going on, and I'm not lying, guys. You could feel electricity in that arena. That this
Mhm.
was an 8 division legendary Hall of Fame transcendent fighter, world champion many times over, and I was thinking to myself, like, how in the hell did I get here? From working like sawdust casinos, working lower level
Warehouses.
in an MMA. I would have to beg somebody to let me work with them.
Yeah.
They're like, no, I want to work with Stitch. I want to work with Miguel Diaz. I want to work with Joe Chavez. I want to work with Carlos Vargas.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to work with Mike Rodriguez, but all those names I just mentioned opened up a lot of doors, including Freddie, kind of trusted me with some of his other guys down the road that ultimately led to their decision that they wanted to hire me to work with Manny. But it was at that moment I looked and I was like, wow, it's almost felt like I was fighting. You know what I mean? Like I was coming out of the curtain like the Ultimate Warrior or Macho Man Randy Savage, a garden, to take on Hulk Hogan. Felt like it. It was just like, okay, now it's time to get back to business to
Yeah.
make sure I take care of my fighter.
Yeah. Do you think that being a homicide detective, that gives you the ability to hit that switch, that let's get the business switch?
I'm
It's
very,
tough. It's hard for some people.
it's not hard for me, guys. I was a former fighter.
Yeah.
I'm in the military. I've been a cop for over 30 years. I've worked in some very bad, busy places,
Mhm.
worked gangs. I've been a homicide now in my 16th year.
Wow.
Pride myself in not being a guy that panics. That
Yeah.
I've been a lot of crunch time, let's just say crunch time situations in my life.
Mhm.
And I'm lucky, maybe because of all that, when something bad happens and a fighter's in a really bad spot and he's bleeding or swelling, everything slows down for me.
Mm.
Slows down for me. All that stuff comes together. And I can see that in my son because the biggest compliment he always gets from people is, man, that kid's cool as a cucumber, man. He's cooler than the other side of the pillow. He doesn't panic.
Whoa.
That's like earlier, that's what you have to do. You have to bring some calm because you
Mhm.
can't take a cut away. Some
Right.
people have very realistic expectations, people that are always trying to put other people down. And I'm
Mhm.
always very careful with those kind of people. I can't take the cut away. I'm not, I just can't.
Right.
You can
Magical healer.
swelling. You can try to address it before it becomes a problem. When you stand your guy up, hopefully he's not bleeding. Well, if Kobe Bryant or Shaquille or Michael Jordan sprain their ankle and during another play they twist their ankle again, you're going to cause more damage. And if a guy gets head butted or hit again, you just try to do the best work you can in the allotted time that you have. And a lot of that has to being calm and applying the practices and the techniques that work. Everybody has different practices and techniques that they work, but I know the ones that I use work for me. They may not always work for somebody else, but when you look at the top guys, and I always tell people this, when you look at the same 7 or 8 cutmen that seem to work with all the top fighters, just kind of like you see all the same trainers, same 10 trainers working with all the top guys, it's not a coincidence. It's because they've had a model of consistency in their body of work that people trust on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Now, with this whole situation with COVID, do you think it's going to be more of a normal thing to be a cutman for the promotion, kind of like the UFC is, because of any cutman? I mean, the last thing you would want, I can only imagine, is for a fighter to go in there and the cutman test positive, so now the fighter has no cutman. Do you think it's kind of like an insurance policy that way? And do you prefer it, or do you like to stick with your fighter?
Well, I have enough fighters that keep me busy,
Mhm.
and it's great while I've been working the bubble and the whole, TGB promotions and the PBC and Fox. It's great because I'm working. I'm one of the guys that's working.
Mhm.
For a guy that's not working, it's probably not so great to see, hey,
Yeah.
Mike's working with my guy, just like I'm going to be when I see Tug Nambar
Mm.
and Sergey Lipinets, fighting, and then somebody else is working with them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah, I would just hope that we can go back to normal as soon as possible.
Yeah.
If this is the way we have to do it for the time being, you know what? Then I'm always a good soldier. I'm always a good Indian.
Mhm.
Whether I like something or not, I'm always going to do what's best for the fighter, what's best for the team. You
Mhm.
know, I don't have any complaints whatsoever. I've been working. I've worked a bunch of world title fights. Just think of this, guys. In the last month, I've worked with Jessica McCaskill on a Matchroom to Zone card who won a world title. I
Yeah.
work with Porter. I work with Erislandy Lara that defended his title, and I just work with Yordenis Ugas. That's all in a month.
Wow.
When
Wow.
I
It's a
think
pretty
of
good month.
when I think championship pedigree, and to me, when somebody talks to me and they have an opinion, the first question I'm going to ask myself is, do they have championship pedigree?
Hmm.
If they don't, then I'm probably not going to listen to them. If they have championship pedigree, then I'm going to stop and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to evaluate what they have to say.
Nice. Yeah. You being in the gym, well, I know before you were in the gym a lot as well, right? Does
Right.
now are you still able to do that, or is it a little harder? How do you see the
Well,
fighters now?
about a year and a half ago, because I'm getting close to retirement at Homicide Bureau at Sheriff's Department, I was
Okay.
asked to take over the missing persons unit. So I
Okay.
supervised the missing persons unit, which we evaluate all adult missing people. Was there foul play involved with people with
Mm,
illness, all these different things. So um, it keeps me very, very busy. I
gotcha.
try to gym when I can. I imagine when I retire next year, I'm going to have an opportunity to be in the gym a lot more. I spend a lot of time at Wildcard Gym with Freddie and Marie and Marvin and Julian Chua and
Mhm.
Pepe Riley and all the fighters over there. I spend a lot of time at Pullman's gym up in Northridge with John Pullman. John's like family to me. That's kind of one of my two home gyms,
Mhm.
Wildcard and Pullman's. And then I move around over to where Legends is. And, I'm very tight with
Wow.
Joel D that he does over there out in Indio.
Mhm.
And because of War Tape and the amount of fighters that
Right.
use War Tape and that we sponsor, and I'm a partner with them, I've kind of like extend myself as much as I can.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I may even give another shot at maybe training some guys, when I do retire and have time. But I tell you what, I like having the flexibility,
Mhm.
move around and be able to accommodate more fighters and be their cut man. Now, if they like me to be an extra set of eyes, like I do
Mhm.
with fighters, maybe offer a couple of suggestions, I'm always down for that as well.
Yeah. Gotcha. Are you looking forward to retirement because you can spend more time with the fighters and in the gym?
You know what? I am, but I still love what I do, and I'm
Of
contemplating,
course.
right, maybe do another year or two. I've ran the homicide school, the 2 week school for the state of California for the sheriff's
Wow.
department the last 10 years. So
Awesome.
do a lot of lecturing and teaching, and I'm still thinking about doing some consulting and some stuff on my own outside of what I'm doing now, just kind of on my own based on my expertise. But yeah, the great thing about being in this position, guys, is I have the option to do what I want.
Yeah.
And I think, anybody in life, we always want to be in control of what we do. And I always tell my sons this, or younger fighters, or people maybe that I mentor, don't let anybody else decide what happens to you based
Mhm.
on actions or lack of actions.
Right.
Nothing better as an adult, male, female, whoever you are, to be in control of your own destiny.
Yeah.
And and finding something that you love in life that you can do. I mean, think about it. I have a front row seat, even under unfortunate circumstances. But you think about what I do for a living as a homicide detective, supervising the missing persons unit, and as a boxing cut man. I have a front row seat to what most people have to, in order to see, they have to watch on TV. And I experience it,
Mhm.
firsthand, for better or for worse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Joe Rogan said it. He said that it gave him an appreciation that much more of what he does because there's no crowd and because very few people are there. So I can kind of see it how yeah, you're so thankful to be there since everyone else is watching it on TV, and I'm sure you can hear everything a lot better. All the punches, everything is just magnified,
What's
right?
weird though is that once the fights are going, you're so, as a cut man, you watch a fight different than what a trainer watches.
Hmm.
You're watching for those potential wildfires to spread, whether it's a
Right.
red mark on a face, or a guy's nose is bleeding, or you see maybe some old scar tissue is getting roughed up a little bit.
Hmm.
A lot of times in between rounds, you're getting your stuff together, your gauze pads, your medicine. And sometimes I'll look up and be like, okay, there's only a minute left in the round. So I'm watching
Hmm.
it from a little different perspective, especially if a guy's in a tough fight. But getting back to what you said, I'm very grateful to be working, and I'm very appreciative of that. Nobody likes to get tested and go quarantine for a couple of days and just sit in a hotel room. You don't want, no, it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun. But it's the price of doing business now. And if that's the price of doing business, and if that's what's safe and which allows me to work to do something that I love with people that I love being around, then I'm willing to pay that price.
Gotcha. Now, a little inside info. Are there some up and comers that you really, really like that we should kind of keep our eye on?
Yeah, and I work with Joey Spencer. He's
Mm-hmm.
always a priority with PBC. Gets a lot of TV fights. The one kid that I hope to be able to work with down the road is Elvis Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
With Fred Coach, there were some talks I was possibly going to work with Elvis, and all this stuff happened, and it kind of changed things. But I think he's fought 3 times, over in. I think he's fought 3 times over in the bubble, the MGM. Whether I work with him or, I'm going to wish that I'm a big fan of his.
Mm-hmm.
I worked recently with Vito Melanicki,
Nice.
I think he just turned 18. Really, really good looking kid.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some other guys that are still younger that have moved down the road and moved up. Like guys like Chris Colbert out of Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Trainer Ariano Sosa, who's a great trainer. If you haven't heard of him yet, you will be hearing from him. He is the premier trainer over in New York. I mean, he's had so many kids that have been Olympians and national champions, and he's just one of those guys that takes kids from 8 or 9 years old and basically changes their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I work with a lot of guys, from Eastern Bloc countries in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Russia, the Ukraine, and then I have such an affinity for the fighters that I've worked with, guys for a long time, guys like Julian J. Rock Williams. What a journey with a guy like that for 10 years, seeing a 20-year-old kid, and we're fighting on, undercards at 2 p.m. and, wielding his way all the way up to world title fight.
Yeah.
It's a very special thing where sometimes the end result and the destination, when you look back, it's really about the journey and how you take it and who you take it with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know I've hugged up the whole conversation, man. I
It's
even
okay.
forgot this guy was even here. So
I'm listening to stories. I can listen to it for hours. Mike, I had a question. Out of
Sure.
all the events you've covered for all these years, what's your favorite?
Oh man, there's nothing, guys, like winning a world title. There's nothing like it.
Mm-hmm.
When Sergey Lipinets fought Hirokoi Kondo at the Barclays Center, when he won the world title, my son was in the corner.
Wow.
He had one at the face, I had the other. The trainer was Buddy McGirt.
Oh, that's cool.
Sergey won the world title. When Julian beat Jared Hurd in a fight that nobody thought he was going to beat Jared Hurd in the backyard. The crazy thing about it is I just knew that Julian was going to win that fight in the fashion that he wasn't a surprise to us. I went to Russia with Denis Lebedev when he fought Ori Kalanga, and it was a sold out arena in Russia, and everybody, they were singing and chanting.
Yeah.
And I think being with Manny Pacquiao, excuse me, and what I described earlier, it still kind of brings goosebumps to me just to realize to be at such a big event.
Yeah.
Those are just a couple of the ones that stand out to me, but there's nothing like winning a world title. And let me tell you something, even though I only worked with them for one time and there were no fans and it was outside in 100-degree sweltering Tulsa heat with, I think, 112 humidity, working with Jessica McCaskill, beating Cecilia Breakhouse, who was undefeated.
Oh, yeah, the big upset.
Who was trying to break the record of Joe Louis for all time of title defenses at 26, with trainer Rick Ramos, who's a really good friend of mine, and we'd always talked about working together. That was pretty special to me too, because I just bonded with them. And it was just something that really, really touched my heart. If you ever read Jessica's story and you read the perseverance of a guy like Rick, who's not a guy that's going to take no for an answer. You know what I mean? You're just not going to send him away. If he was selling newspapers, guys, he would come back to your house every day, and by the third day, you would buy the subscription, because he believes, first of all, he believes in himself. He believes in what he's doing, and not just some guy that's out there just trying to hustle and make a name for himself.
Mhm.
He's putting hard work, and that's very evident by what he's done with Jessica. And now she's think about this guy. She is undisputed welterweight champion of the world, and not ever say that. So when you think about those things, that was actually pretty special to me too. Had a chance time fight week, and when I look forward to being able to work with them again. One of the other ones I've worked with, obviously I've worked with Freddie Roach, I've worked with Joe Goosen, I've worked with Joel Diaz, and within the last couple of years, with Ismael Salas, the Cuban trainer, who first of all and foremost, he's just a fabulous guy, a fabulous man. He takes such pride in what he does. Worked a lot with Danny Zamora, and I've worked some with Manny Robles. I've worked a ton with Stephen Breadman Edwards and John Pullman. So when you look at the trainers that I'm able to work with, I mean, how could I not learn knowledge? I mean, I'm there with these guys and being part of their teams and stuff. And if I'm leaving anybody out, they can call and cut me out. One of the other guys that I really recently had a chance to work with the last year or so, and we've become really, really good friends, is Pepe Riley. And Pepe was Olympic team with Oscar in '92 with Raul Marquez and Oscar De La Hoya. And Pepe, guys that helps Freddie and trains a wild card. But what they don't realize too is he was actually the head trainer for Ray Beltran. So he has that when Ray Beltran won his title. So he has that one thing that we talked about earlier, Olympic championship pedigree. So he's definitely somebody that I'll listen to.
Yeah. Man, Mike, you're a gem, brother. You're a gem. Thank you so much for being on. It's such a pleasure. I've known you for quite a few years now, back and forth. I think the last time I saw you was at the Wilder fight, at the Wilder and Tyson Fury fight backstage. And yeah, man, you're always dropping knowledge, man. And I always appreciate when you come on, man.
I want to say did I have Blair Cobb that night? I forget. Or was Blair Cobb when Canelo fought? I forget when it was. And you know what? I'll always make time for you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I appreciate what you guys do. You guys approach it from a good, honest, journalistic standpoint. All I ever ask anybody is to be fair and equitable. And we're not always going to agree on everything. One thing I always try to look at somebody else's perspective and respect their opinion, and we're just all trying to make the sport better. And like I said earlier, if you do something you love, you never have to work a day in your life. And I'm very blessed with that.
Yeah. Always dropping knowledge. So Mike, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it. And man, thanks for coming on.
Take care.
It's on the sink, on the table, that blow. Got the green, got the white, got the gold. On the table, that blow. Got the green, got the white, got the gold, yeah. Take it in and just blow it all out. If you ain't talking progress, then shut your damn mouth, yeah. Take it in and just blow it all out. If you ain't talking progress, then shut your damn mouth. Take it in, blow it out, blow it out. Take it in, blow it out, blow it out. Take it in, blow it out, blow it out. Take it in, blow it out. Bless up. Why these niggas get they stress up? Yeah, pretty ladies with their eyes, they undress us. Trying to impress us, you gotta do more than twerk. Don't ask for no chips unless you putting in work. And even then, I'm hella greedy. Yeah, trying to feed my fam and not these hoes acting needy. I'm so sorry, sweetie.